This is a demonstration of how to do an E-wrap on the Hamanaka. An E-wrap is a stable casting on. You don't have live stitches in your cast on, and also with this method you don't end up with your knitting knitted into the elastic of the casting on comb / weight, as is normally done with the Hamanaka. What they recommend doing is casting on with waist, and then doing a rival cord, and then getting it off with either a needle or a knitting needle, and that's just not what machine knitters do. So I gave this some thought, and let's see if we can get through this process. I'm still working out the sequence in my head, so hopefully I will remember it. This is the needle bar, the needle something bar, and they talk about using it, but they don't talk about being able to do an E-wrap. And the manual is odd. It has bits and pieces in it, but they don't seem to, whoever wrote it doesn't seem to have been very experienced with machine knitting, like the logical consequence of this, that, or the other for a machine knitter does not occur to them. And so I don't know if the manual was badly edited, or if the person who wrote it just wasn't, if they were just working off of engineering notes or something. It's a little wonky because there are things, this machine is better than the manual. Let's put it that way. Okay. And it's got things built into it, such as the gate pegs here, that seems to have been lost on the manual writers as far as helping you bind or cast off. Okay, so anyway, that said, what I've done is I've taken the needle retaining bar, and I've taken some rubber bands, and I'm holding the needle retaining bar down on the needles to retain them, and I've moved the rubber bands just to the clamps under the table. Okay? At this point, there are two large there we go, screws under the table, the front bed. We're going to undo them and take off the front bed. At this point, I've learned that I'm going to need the clearance of screwing these all the way up when I'm hanging the comb on the E-wrap. So I'm going ahead and doing that. I may find after I've done this 100 times if there's, another way to do it, but right now I don't know it, and I'm showing you what I know. Now I'm going to bring the needles forward. This is where the needle retaining bar is invaluable, because otherwise there's nothing holding these needles in place. I now need yarn, and I also need to be able to get the yarn into the carriage later. And so I'm going to go on and feed the yarn through the yarn holder that mounts to the carriage, like so. I'm going to give myself lots of slack. And just set that off to the side. And I'm going to tie a little overhand knot to begin the E-wrap. Now, I don't know if you know how to do an E-wrap, so let's do an E-wrap. Overhand goes there. You probably could do for this, you could put something here to block the needles in place. That's a real common action. I don't see something right off. Maybe this. Let's bring this old passive thing into... No, we don't want it there. Something similar to that that'll just hold the needles in place but not push them up. Anyway, let's do the E-wrap. So the E-wrap is like writing the lowercase letter E. You do the cross and then around. Cross to the right and around. Cross to the right and around. And you go all the way across. Now I'm going to move you out of the way now that you know what I'm doing. And I'm going to E-wrap across the bed. I would have used less needles so as not to take up so much video time, but the comb that I'm using is I'm trying to use the original Hamanaka stuff rather than another casting on comb, a narrower casting on comb. And so I'm using a great big old heavy wide Hamanaka one, and I really don't want to try to hang it across 20 stitches, so I put 39 because I've got a needle that's going AWOL. The thing with an E-wrap is keep it loose. The other thing about an E-wrap is that since it's loose, it wants to kind of spring back off of the needles if it possibly can. Normally you do the E-wrap back behind the latches, but you can't really do that with this. There's a little bit of gyration that you have to do because of where they put the needle extension bar, and it's possible that I could have put it farther ahead, but right now there's some little slots there and I'm putting them in the slots and trying to play as best I can by the rules of the Hamanaka game. See what it does? Spooling was the best word to describe that magical action. So just keep your attention on it. Don't get distracted. All right. I am now all the way across, and what I would like to see is a little clover clip. I didn't set one out for myself. Bear with me, here's one right here. And I'm going to clip the end down to the same mounting clamp for the machine. Now, at this point, what I need to do is fix this because it came out. One of them popped out. Okay. Yep, I got that right. Miracles do happen. And I'm going to put the casting on comb. For right now, I have the elastic just kind of hanging freely. I don't think that really matters. It just happens to be the way that it was when I started experimenting with this. And I'm going to bring the casting on comb as if I were casting on the regular way up to the machine and latch it on just so I can kind of get my thoughts straight. Okay. Having gathered my thoughts, I want to come forward. And this is why I need the clearance. With the screws that I screwed in, is I want to lean forward and hang the comb in between each stitch, like so. And I want you to see what has been accomplished. The elastic is not in play, And the comb is hanging just like any casting on comb in between the needles, making the little V's in between the E-wraps. With that done, I can push back a bit. I'm just getting out of my own way. Half my life I spend getting out of my own way. And I'm going to bring the front bed back into our lives. And in order to reassemble it, not as sure as I was that I needed to raise these all the way up, and I'll try again without it. I thought that I needed the clearance, but that tilt to get forward into the stitches with the comb worked better the second time than it did the first time. That's where it mounts on each side, so you just find that slot. Tolerances are fairly close on these machines. Almost. And now the front bed is on. You're not safe. One of the things that can happen because of this double bed setup and the free needles is that the needles can go tipping down in between the beds. And I remember this. I'm going to move just a few at a time. I'm raising the weight up when I push the needles forward because all that weight from the casting on comb is making the E-wrap stitches very, very tight. If I can do this with my hands. So up I come. Come over here. Okay, so at this stage, the needles are on both beds and are considerably more stable than they were before. What that means is that I can now take the rubber bands off, but let's not just jump in there and yank them off, okay? I'm holding the needle presser bar down with my hand and I'm releasing. A second. Releasing these rubber bands. And then I'm coming over here and I'm releasing these rubber bands. I'm gently taking the bar out and I'm going to move. Once again, needing to raise the weight. Well, just leave it. It's okay. Let's make sure the latches are open. If you're not from like circular knitting machine people or neurotic about latches being open, and it's a good neurosis to have. If you don't have that particular hang up, I recommend that you develop it because it will help you quite a bit to watch the latches. The Hamanaka needs for you to be careful with the latches as well, because otherwise you'll hit them. And also the clearance is such that if a latch is closed and you're trying to get the carriage over the needle, it might not clear. Oops. So I need to put the yarn in between, in the opening, in the slot of the carriage. And then get the carriage onto the beds, and then get the yarn carrier in place. I don't want to, well, I don't think I care. I was going to say I was going to clip my yarn again, but it's not a loose tail. So let's just knit. Okay, so what do we have? We have the yarn carrier in place with the yarn. We have E-wrap stitches on each of the needles, and we have the comb underneath acting as a normal casting on comb, by which we mean that it is just in the crossbar between the needles, crossbar of yarn between the needles, rather than with the elastic having been the first loop on the needles, as is the recommended cast on, which is not a good one. And here we're going to knit. Now it's going to bump and grind, and what we want to do is raise the weight to ease the pressure, and I've got too much tension on the yarn too. Okay, we're across, and let's see, all of the stitches made except for this last one, so I'm going to manually make this stitch by pulling the needle through it. I've still got far too much tension there. The tension on these yarn masks is terrible. I'm gonna take this to a garter stitch. So I'm gonna bring the needles across the bed. Well, no, let's leave it. You could go straight into pattern, okay? But let's just knit. Let's come back across. Everybody knitted. Everybody knitted. So I'm going to do a few rows, and then we're going to look at what we have. That's not enough. Oops. This needs a little bit of weight on the corner, but we're going to, there, we got caught. Okay, so we're playing yarn chicken, and we don't want to. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to cut this. That I haven't worked out yet how to get the yarn on the right side of the join between the carriages. So just be aware that if you do what I did, you'll have it crossing over right here like a little bridge. And of course, after a while, it's too short. But let's see what we have. So the way I want to do this is I want to get that comb out because it's heavy. And all I have to do is tip the comb out. And look, I'm free. Then I'm going to bring my yarn and I'm going to hold the knitting. I don't want to knit a row. I guess we're going to knit a row, so hang on. I should have taken my yarn out, huh? All right. I'm now going to do it the right way. Take the yarn out of the carrier. Get the yarn out of the way. The double beds are kind of a hassle with this sort of thing. You end up using bodkins and hair extender, long-eyed needles, and all sorts of gizmos. So now I'm going to do what I intended to do, which is hold the needles down, hold the yarn down, hold the knitting down, and gently knit off. And we're going to look at what we've got. Here, it's live up here because I just knit off. I didn't bind off or cast off. But look down here. We have an E-wrap selvage. So, now you can put that into your toolkit.